The stench of scorched metal and waterlogged ash from the propane depot hung over Rocinha for weeks, a persistent reminder of the ADA's vulnerability. The age of iron had devolved into an age of rust and decay. The Third Command's siege strategy, a suffocating war of economic attrition, was working with devastating efficiency. The flow of narcotics, the lifeblood of the faction's economy, had trickled to a drought. The immense profits that once bought loyalty and silenced dissent evaporated, leaving behind a vacuum filled with simmering resentment. Mateo, isolated in his claustrophobic command post above the bakery, watched his dominion crumble. The Vallon sector, once the bustling commercial artery of the lower hill, was now a muddy scar of closed shops and suspicious eyes. The residents who had once viewed the faction with a complex mixture of fear and necessary respect now looked at Mateo's dwindling soldiers with open hostility. The social contract of the favela, protection in exchange for silence, had been broken by the depot fire. The ADA could no longer guarantee safety, and therefore their authority was revealed to be hollow, maintained only by the barrel of a rifle. The true threat, however, did not come from the enemy snipers across the valley or the angry mothers in the streets. It came from the clandestine cell phones that buzzed in the dead of night. The leadership in the Bangu penitentiary, entombed in concrete cells far removed from the mud and blood of the hill, did not deal in nuances. They dealt in logarithms of profit and loss, and Rocinha was currently operating at an unacceptable deficit. They viewed Mateo's reports of siege and sabotage not as legitimate reasons, but as excuses for incompetence. The prison kings decided an intervention was necessary. They did not send reinforcements of weapons or soldiers. They sent an auditor. His name was Cobra, a man sculpted entirely within the brutal ecosystem of the penal system. He arrived in Rocinha not with the swagger of a street soldier, but with the chilling quiet of an executioner. Cobra had dead eyes and a reputation for resolving inefficiencies with extreme prejudice. He was technically of equal rank to Mateo, but carried the unspoken mandate of the ultimate bosses. Cobra's assessment of Mateo's operation was brutal. "You run this hill like a politician trying to win votes, Gerente. We are not politicians. We are occupiers. If they don't love us, they must be terrified of us. You have allowed them to forget the terror." Under Cobra's shadow, the governance of Rocinha shifted from defensive paranoia to proactive cruelty. The nuanced understanding of community relations that Mateo had once possessed was discarded. Cobra implemented draconian measures to squeeze revenue from a starving population. Taxation on basic services, water, electricity, internet, was doubled, enforced by beatings that were performed publicly, designed for maximum theatrical intimidation. Mateo found himself reduced to a spectral figure in his own kingdom, executing orders that turned his stomach. He was forced to accompany Cobra on a pacification mission into a sector that had shown reluctance to pay the new levies. They didn't hunt Third Command soldiers, they hunted influence. They dragged a respected community elder, a man who had dared to voice complaints about the water tax, out of his home in the middle of the night. The subsequent interrogation in a damp basement was not about gathering information. It was a performance of absolute power designed to break the spirit of the neighborhood. Mateo stood in the corner, watching as Cobra systematically dismantled the old man's dignity. He realized then the true depths of his fall. He had killed his friend Elias to preserve the empire's stability, a cold act of strategic necessity. But this wanton cruelty inflicted on their own people was the death rattle of a regime that had lost its way. As dawn broke, Painting the sky in bruise-colored hues, Mateo stood on a rooftop overlooking the sprawling, restless favela. The immediate financial bleeding had been staunchly stemmed by Cobra's terror tactics, satisfying the distant masters in prison for now. But looking down at the dark, narrow alleys, Mateo knew they had crossed an irreversible threshold. The ADA was no longer the sovereign power fighting a war for territory. They were now jailers, trapped inside their own prison, waiting for the inevitable riot of the inmates. The concrete empire still stood, but its foundation was now entirely made of hate.